Yeah, yeah.
Disasters in the Indian Himalayan region are primarily the interplay of climate change and the mountainous character of the region. Climate change has two basic physical manifestations. One is the rising temperature rise to unprecedented levels. And second is the changing rainfall patterns in the form of unseasonal rains and short spells of very heavy or intense rain. The Indian Himalayan region is dominated by three mountain ranges that run roughly parallel to the Great Himalayan Arc. These seemingly mighty mountains are actually crumpled, fractured, fissured, disjointed rock masses that have arisen from the Earth's crust as the Indian plate has been sliding down the Asian plate. Okay? So, consequently, the mountains are extremely fragile. Okay? Now, their, their fragility is usually hidden by the green cover and the snow. Now, in recent years, we have seen an increasing frequency of disasters particularly during the monsoonal months. And these, as you know, include primarily floods, landslides, avalanches. Hmm? Though avalanches normally occur um, closer to the winter spring um months. Now, um, the these are driven, besides climate change, they are also driven by the introduction of many infrastructure projects in these unstable regions, such as dams, roads, roads meaning highways, and railways. By the rapid urban expansion to absorb the tourist traffic. So all these have led to a rapid increase in the number of disasters. The Let's take the case of dams. In the event of very intense rainfall, particularly in the smaller streams which have narrower valleys and steeper valleys, the water comes hurtling down the slope. If there is any obstruction like a dam, then the water collects behind the dam, water pressure builds up, and ultimately the dam operator has to suddenly open the gates, or there is a catastrophic collapse of the dam. Each time this happens, the water rushes down its bed with increased energy and thus causes havoc downstream. Now, we saw this happen in the June 2013 Kedarnath flood, which was caused by a glacial lake failure. We also saw it in 2023 in the South Lona Glacier failure in Sikkim, in the Teesta Valley. We have seen dam operators suddenly opening the gates, both at Srinagar in Garhwal, as well as in the Mahakali River on the Uttarakhand-Nepal border in 2013. Now, there is another problem that in recent years, there are fewer large storage dams. And there are many more of these, what are called run of the river dams, but these are actually diversion dams. They require tunnels to be built. Building tunnels is also a hazardous enterprise. And very often, the actual digging of the tunnel in the mountains is not done by the large companies like L&T or Hindustan Construction Corporation, which may be the main agency that is hired to do the job, but they hire local contractors. And so the kind of care that is required is not done. Now, let's come to roads, highways. What highways in these areas, since they require cutting the slopes in very fragile regions, there are norms that have been laid down after lots of research studies, and these are norms that are laid down by notifications of the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. Yet, what we find is that in the rush to push these projects to completion, the kind of geological studies, prior geological studies and investigations that need to be done are either not done or not done properly. As a result, some of the basic rules of safe road construction are avoided. For example, the one of the rules is that in the mountain areas, you do not cut slopes more than 30 degrees. Yet we find this is routinely ignored. We also notice that road widths should be limited. There is a notification of 2016 of the ministry. It says that the road limit in the width in the mountain region should not exceed 5.5 meters. But here we have 10-meter wide highways being built. So the already fragile slopes are further weakened, and that leads to an increase in the landslides. Now, we have to remember that these landslides are also more common along the slopes of the three mountain ranges um, in this region. Because they are barriers to the movement of rain-bearing clouds. And each time the rain-bearing clouds strike these mountain ranges, they deposit a lot of rain. So they are sites of very intense, what we call focused rainfall. And so you have a combination of weakened slopes and intense rainfall, and therefore increasing landslides. The third major problem is that of railways, but that is partly covered similar to tunnels and roads that I have mentioned. The third big problem is that of the rapid expansion of urban areas. Take Mussoorie, Gangtok, Darjeeling, Shimla. These are overcrowded. These cities lack adequate forest cover, first of all. Forest cover is essential to protect our slopes. Secondly, nobody has done a carrying capacity study of these areas, which are absolutely important. And only in the past, the British had very careful rules of how many people can come, how many vehicles can come, and so on. We also had them until about 15, 20 years ago, but we have abandoned them. So our cities, mountain cities, are overcrowded. We have no discipline of planning, urban planning in the mountain areas. And tourism gets focused in few locations. So heavy traffic going to these areas. And when you take something like the Char Dham, which are at the end of very narrow valleys, and there's just the glacier beyond them, then all that pollution, the black carbon soot that comes out of our vehicles, goes and deposits on the glaciers, leading to faster melting of the glaciers. Now, what do we have to do as an alternative to economic development in this area? I would say that the first thing is to have much more of a forest cover than we have today. The actual forest cover in a state like Uttarakhand, for example, is only 40 odd percent, even though 67% is said to be forested area. We need more forest cover, and this cannot be done by the forest department alone. It has to involve the community, and community has to be given ownership of its neighborhood forest, otherwise they don't have a stake in it. Okay. Second thing that needs to be done is to revive the dying springs and small streams in the mountain areas. These are the sources of daily household needs, both for rural areas and for cities, as well as for irrigation. Okay. We need that. Third is to invest heavily in terms of research, finance into modernizing our agriculture. But you can't modernize just in the sense of what goes on in the plains. What we need to do is to, under the temperature and rainfall conditions, what kind of cropping patterns do we need? Can we introduce ecological agriculture? Huh? Then we need to practice integrated farming, which was a tradition in the mountain areas. That is, you combine forestry, animal husbandry with cultivation of crops and provide them with good access to markets. Crops that need to be cultivated could be niche crops that bring in a lot of income to a farmer, even from small plots. So it would include horticultural fruits like walnuts, apples, apricots, or it could include uh, crops like rajma, red kidney beans, which yield a good amount of value to the farmer. The third, as I've already pointed out, is that if we are going to promote tourism and expand our cities, before we do all that, the tourism access roads require very careful geological studies. It requires adhering to the norms that have been established, and for the cities, we require carrying capacity studies. Okay, so these are some of my quick reactions to your questions.